Hello. Let me just try and click LinkedIn here to see if there's light.
Oh, double verifying.
Yeah. Just wait just a second.
How many have you done of these so far?
Let's see. I'll just click the actual event. It is live now. Great.
Awesome.
Somebody actually already commented. Okay, nice. Good. We're live, Philip. And thank you so much for volunteering to participate today. So we are to talk about content as a revenue driver in a B2B company, and I know it's I think both of us are a bit passionate about, and it's a tactic we return to. So I'm really looking forward to talking with you about it. But maybe just for people who don't know you, maybe we can get the 1-2 minute of your career.
Well, I can do it much faster than that. So yeah, I started about 12 years ago in marketing. So way back in the day when it was SEO was the rave. It still is the rave, of course, right? And then I started on my own. And after that, I moved into startups, the startup world, very, very fast. And I've been there for the last 10 years, and it's primarily been within software companies, right? And a lot of the content has been my focus, right? And primarily to help scale. So scaling the organization through content has been what I've been really passionate about. Seen some great results, seen some bad results, but overall learned a lot of things. So like that's how we do it, right? And right now I'm the CEO at Eskimi, and we're an advertising platform, and we help agencies and brands serve great ads to the audiences with ton of advanced targeting. Also, speaking of content, also we do custom ads. So we're about 250 people spread across the world, and yeah. Overall, I would say I have a very good eye for quality, especially within B2B, and also how it translates into quality, into traffic, leads, and revenue, right? So overall, from a business perspective, I'm a big fan, but from the consumer side, I'm also a very big fan of content and take a good interest in seeing that and understand that. So yeah.
Super nice, Philip. And for you guys who are listening, just view this as a conversation that you can take part of. So any questions, comments, or tactics you've tried that worked, just do shoot it in here. What I've talked with Philip about before we started here is to try to be very specific. So if you feel that we could elaborate something more, just ask the question or comment on LinkedIn. But Philip, just to maybe just warm us up a little bit on this content topic. So let's start with what is content to you? Why should you produce content?
Yeah, that's a good question. Very broad question, of course, but content is everything, and yeah, you can quote me on that. That's a big content is everything for me in terms of how I see this world function that we're in, right? So for B2B specifically, I think content is a differentiator. Like this is something that you can create that sets you apart from the other brands that you compete against, right? And it doesn't matter if this is a white paper, it's a tweet, it's an ad, like it's an email, it's a flyer, it's a design, right? The format is irrelevant, right? So everything we produce can be considered content, right? And that's why it's so important.
Yeah,
I think
and I think the way I think about at least one way I think about content as well, I think very much about the website as the host of the content, although there's obviously other platforms as well. But at least what I'm trying to do with Dreamdata is to make the website become the place where at least can find an answer to any possible topic you can ask related to Dreamdata, so that when the leads do convert into demo calls and talk with salespeople, then they've at least had an opportunity to find the answer themselves before they have to ask a salesperson. But maybe that's one bucket, what you do on your website, and then there's another bucket of what you do outside the website.
I think you're quite right on this with the website. So from what I've seen in the last couple of years, I've worked a lot with a lot of sales teams, and there's a lot of content hidden behind the scenes that they have for sales decks, white papers, all these things that they send, right? but actually getting that out and live on the website and being able to share that, I think that's very important, right? So, but regarding content, I think the last 5 years, my philosophy has changed, right? So moving a lot more away from blog posts and white papers and newsletters, right? All the ordinary ways that we as B2B marketers have approached it, right? So I think I mentioned before about like TikTok. I'm very fascinated by TikTok at the moment, right? Some of the best creators in the world are creating content here, right? I know this is a B2B talk on LinkedIn, right? But this is fascinating to see how people create content these days, right? So yeah, I'm very old when I see these pieces of content, but I like that their mindset, right? And putting the audiences first and catering to the platform. Just like you and me are catering to LinkedIn Live now, right? It's part of the embedded format, right? And it works better with better reach, right? So always looking into new channels and trying that out. Not that I'm planning to do that with Eskimi, but it's always a good approach to always have an eye open on that, right?
Yeah, and I think I at least started out with content from an SEO perspective, and it can be a little bit hard to let go of your darlings because it used to be like, I started out really caring about organic traffic in Google Analytics and whatever search engine tool I was using. It was so important to be number one on these search terms.
Yeah.
But I think when you do get more experienced, even within the SEO discipline, you also start to know a little bit more. But I think in general, like nowadays, I don't think about content as an SEO discipline. I think about we need to create relevant information for people who fit somewhat of our ideal customer profile.
Yeah.
But back in the day and related to this, I was really, really just trying to game the search engines to push my content pieces up to get the traffic into the website.
Yeah. I've also approached it like that. And that's some of the early mistakes, not that early, but earlier mistakes that I did. I was also trying to over-optimize for like how much traffic can I get in terms of relevance, audience segmentation, these things, right? So I think when you asked about why you should produce content, and I hate to paraphrase Simon Sinek, but it starts with why. Why are we creating this content? Like why are we creating this strategy, right? How does this serve our goals as an organization? So the topic of this is, of course, revenue. So the point of producing content is in the end revenue, right? So for many of us in B2B that have sales teams, it's part of that. They need support, they need leads, and that's from revenue, right? But of course, we will probably also touch upon the other parts of it, right? Awareness, conversions, positioning, deal cycle acceleration, right? Retention, thought leadership. And some of these might be buzzwords, but I think overall, people should be aligned on this with their management, their entire organization. Like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, and I guess it also depends on at what stage is your company at. Are you kind of just starting out from scratch? Are you established, or what are you trying to do here? And kind of the path I took with Dreamdata was that, like, initially there was no website, so you need to build a website, and I needed to explain the technology of what we were at least claiming that we had in the beginning. And then later on, once we started having salespeople, I realized, shit, the salespeople doesn't know as much as me about marketing or data or technology. So now I had to listen to the salespeople. What are the questions that they are consistently being asked? Because then I can at least, write a piece of content that answers the questions that they continuously hear. But it depends on the priorities in your organization. But I think it's a great place to start is to go in and listen to what are the salespeople talking with the customers about, and then try to answer those questions in a really, really good way.
Yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 main ways that we think about like content and getting that right. It's the customers, it's coworkers, it's from data, and it's looking at competitors. Like what are they doing, right? So I think a lot of them might look as if they have the answer, right? But mirroring that from what's happening in the market, I think that's also very important early on to see what should we start producing and why should we produce it? Not because our competitors are doing it or because someone says we should do it, but what does the market say? Like what types of format, like what stage you're at, right? So mapping this all together, and that's not easy, right? So content is becoming increasingly harder, especially within B2B. So
can you just, I mean, I think this is actually not something I do that much anymore, but could you talk about, you said mirroring what competitors do? So
yeah,
what are the, like, if you were to like step into a new company and analyze the 3-4 main competitors, what would you be looking at their websites?
I would look at different content areas. I would also look at the data points, right? Using tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush are really good ways of getting not only introductions to what is working for them in terms of SEO, but also digging deeper into their content, right? So it really also looks into looking at their what they're promoting on the different channels, right? So we're using the intelligence that Facebook has under Ads Manager, going in, seeing what ads are they running, how long have they run this ad for, right? This must be working, right? So this white paper they've been promoting for the last year, either they're bad at marketing or it's working, right? So like 50-50. If you don't have Dreamdata, of course, right? But I think that's very important.
It's that actually reminded me. I haven't checked out which ads my competitors are running for a while, but it's actually at least both on Facebook and also LinkedIn. You can actually go to their pages and you can see which ads that they are running.
Yeah.
So like if you haven't done that before, it can be quite interesting to see.
Yeah, good inspiration. I have like one of these swipe files where I used to save the post, but now I take a screenshot of it and save the link and have like a swipe file where I'm keeping these ads, right? It's always good to have inspiration. Just a little tidbit. I can see Thomas has a question. I'm not sure if we're entering now. Just don't.
Yeah, let's just do it right away.
Delay.
I can click a button here, then everybody can see it. So yeah, I can read it out loud. When we have the content, the next question would be gated or not gated. So just to explain, if somebody doesn't know what it means, then at least how I understand it is gated is when you have to pay for the content in some way. Typically, it's with your email or your phone number. And the other option would be to non-gated, so everybody can just read all the content all the time. How do you see that, Philip?
So you wanna fight? That's what you want to do right now, because this is a hot topic for a lot of marketers. I think Thomas asks the right question, like when do we do it? And I think it really depends on, as I said earlier, the nature of the platform. So for LinkedIn, I would love to be able to show as much as possible and give people access and like impressions, a lot of viewability on LinkedIn. But when people are on my website, either there's 2 options or 3 options. They leave the site, they book a demo, or they download a white paper, right? So having that white paper as an option, I like that if the attempt is there. The main reason I see people not liking gated content is because usually what happens is that we get this, it goes into HubSpot, Salesforce, it gets scored, like if it's the CEO of Microsoft, it gets a high score, and it goes directly to a salesperson, right? It goes directly to a salesperson that calls them. There's no intent, it might just be very early in the stage. So there's this mismatch between sales and marketing, like when are we transferring leads to sales? And I think that's where it breaks a lot of time, right? Because people have had bad experiences with this. Overall, I'm not against gated content done correctly. And I've done it many times in the past, but I'm changing approach a little bit. A little bit more
like
hybrid approach.
If we just go into the question of why you would gate at all, I think I think gating the content is, you have to do it in a few places, at least that, like, fundamentally, I think you should ungate as much as possible, because it's about allowing the right people to see the information at any point of time. But we also all like to get paid and receive salary once a month or something like that. And in order for us to do that, we need to feed the salespeople leads, accounts, etc., that they can work on. And by asking for an email can be a way to find people that the salespeople could talk to. But I just feel like particularly some of if you do very broad ebooks, it's really not it's at least not what I would call a qualified lead you get there. Like 9 out of 10 times it's just people lurking around, downloading an ebook without direct access, as you said yourself. There's no intent behind it.
No, I have an example that I recently came across saying it's impossible almost to not have gated is webinars. So because you need access, it's not the main priority, it's reminders of this, right? And also the technical part of signing up for a webinar, right? So a webinar is usually a very good place to have it. And I don't think I've seen many places where it's not applicable. Of course, when it's pre-recorded and it's evergreen or it's like on demand, I would not actually put a gate on them. I would let people consume that content. So that's one of the places where I would let it fly, unless it's like a live webinar where people need a reminder, because we've just seen some data that the reminders for these webinars is pivotal for success. Otherwise, people will forget about it. So yeah, that's one place.
Yeah, I think in general, I would say ungate as much as possible, and then count on, pray that people will come back and book the demo when they feel educated enough to buy. But it is also kind of, there is this, us marketers also do like to have something to show that we've actually done something. And then the emails that you do collect by gating stuff can be a way to go to the CEO and say, look, I actually did something.
I think there's a lot of disagreement on that one in terms of getting, if we're talking about revenue, right? That entertains a lot of things with email marketing afterwards also, right? So that's a whole other topic. But it's a good question.
I've done things where examples where we've done really well-written blog posts that are free and open on the website, and then on LinkedIn I've then packaged it as put in your email here to actually receive this blog post. So if you came to the website, you could just read it. But to defend the ad spend on LinkedIn, you need that kind of lead collected to kind of justify keep running the ads.
I've done something similar in the past for SEO in terms of just having like an ebook, a full ebook on the site. Not that it still looks good, right? But right next to it, would you like this as a PDF? And within that space, a lot of people wanted it as a PDF. So we got about 2,000 or 3,000 downloads a month from these white papers on the site.
Can you talk a little bit about more that case? Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, so this was when I worked for iMotions, which is a multimodal biometric research platform, very fancy, really complicated, very sophisticated software, and also a very interesting space. So there's a lot of big content that can be created, and not a lot of good ones was done besides Wikipedia. So we created a lot of very advanced and also very specific blog posts regarding very broad topics like eye tracking. So made guides for each of these modalities like EEG, all these eye tracking things, and all these different metrics around your body that we can measure. And then we just made it into an ebook next to it. We didn't use any money to promote it. It was just part of the package, right? We have it optimized for a site, and then you can also download it if you want to share it with colleagues or have it in a prettier format, right? So that's a value add.
And then, I've actually really liked that it's not gated, but you offer it next to it, either like sign up to our newsletter or, get it as a PDF or something like that.
Yeah.
What happened to those leads after they downloaded the ebook? Or sorry, the PDF or whatever.
They went to
sales. They went directly to sales.
No, they didn't. Of course they didn't. No, they didn't. Of course they didn't. They actually went into some nurture sequences that we created in sales or in products. So nothing went to sales. We did a manual review once a month in terms of lead scoring with the sales leaders, but nothing that at scale got sent because we had enough inbound leads, which is crazy to say. Yes.
When was the handover to sales then for the leads?
For the leads came naturally. There was no physical handover, so it was education, like jab, right hook kind of way. Like,
and then somebody books a demo, and then a salesperson takes it.
So we could see a lot of it. It wasn't the data that is possible today with tools like I won't name tools, it's much easier to see this conversion rate and the journey, right? But we could definitely see it by looking just at the data from the specific customers, but nothing at scale.
Yeah, I really like that, and I think it's how we do it as well, and I think how I like to treat people, because if you like downloading that PDF shows that you're interested in the topic, you're not out there to buy, so you shouldn't be treated as somebody you want to pull into a sales conversation. No. But if then at some point I want to buy it, of course I will go back and book the demo.
Yeah, again, this goes into like long-term sales and education, and I think we have some questions in the chat. Maybe we can put them in, and
yeah, that's
kind of relates to it, just so
another content classic from Mathilde.
Yes.
What KPIs do you measure when doing content? You can start, Philip, and then I'll join afterwards.
Yeah, it really depends on which, again, stage. Everything depends, right? But this stage we're in and where we're at in the process of creating it. So in the beginning, like the very early beginnings, when we talk about SEO, it's just impressions. It's not even click-through rate in Google. It's impressions. Like how is the content being done out in Google? So that's the very first one. Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one when you're looking at creating scale. It's one of the leading indicators, right? It's not something that it's a vanity metric. Impressions and traffic are vanity metrics. I will say it here, vanity metrics, but it's still a leading indicator, right, in terms of planning ahead and seeing what's actually getting ranked, right? So there is both the qualitative side of this and the quantitative side, but overall, it's conversion rate, it's revenue. Those will be the last two, right? So how many of these people convert?
Yeah, I think it's actually really it's always a good framework to think about marketing leading indicators and lagging indicators, because the journey typically takes 6 months in our B2B world. So what do you actually look at in the beginning? I would say even before impressions, if we are to do vanity, I would also say if you're starting from scratch, productivity also just matters. How many pieces of content are you actually putting on your website? Yeah. How many words are going live? Because even before the impression, it starts with you actually putting stuff out.
Yeah. I think consistency, it's the same word, right? But consistency in your output, I think that's a very good one. And that's why people have these content calendars, right? It's not always just a plan, it's also to have consistency and be sure that this gets put out, right? So there's someone above you that always is helping you to help you with that KPI. So we have had output as KPI. It doesn't state anything about the quality of the content, right? But it's again, it's a good start. We have to start somewhere.
Even with inside of Dreamdata, where we do have our own product available, me and Jeremy, at the start of the year, still talked about how many articles do we think we can put out this year if we're being really productive. So I think we settled on we can put out 2 per week or something like that. So if we know if we at least we do that, then we're not completely wasting our time.
No, but again, that you can shoot yourself on the foot with that if you don't have any distribution, right? Again, if it's still just on LinkedIn, and how much time we're spending promoting these 2 pieces of content? Is it SEO related? Do we need to create a little bit more link profile with these things? So it all ties into a very big calculus that needs to get respected, right? So
I can have an anecdote from when I was working at Airtame, my last job before Dreamdata. I was we had been very heavily driven by paid marketing, and then as you get more experienced, you realize that you don't do these 6 or 7 figure contracts with people clicking on Facebook ads. So I went to the CEO and said, now we need to bet on content. And from one year to the other, I got budget for, I think, hiring 4 people, a writer, a designer, videographer, and then a manager for the team. And that's head count of 4 people. Then you're actually then you want to have proof that stuff works. And for the longest part, the only thing I could show was organic traffic went up in Google. Oh, look at Ahrefs, our rank went up there as well. But the problem is you can't pay salary with these metrics. No. So you need to figure out a way to come up with explanations of why is this valuable for the company.
I
Obviously,
think
there's
that ties
software
into,
that
yeah. I think that
Go ahead,
ties into
Philip.
very much with alignment in the company, right? With management, like in poker, there's an expression that's I really like. It's decisions, not results. This is not something that a CEO likes to hear when like, why are we not getting any revenue from this content? But overall, we also have to believe in our strategy long term. As you say, it's a 6-month project. If you look at many B2B companies' data, right? So
Yeah,
having that part of the journey, right? So let's not take that we created 10 blog posts and we didn't see any revenue. So we have to be realistic when we set these expectations towards KPIs.
And I actually don't think the CEO is being unreasonable either, say, because like for me, I was like having the salary of 4 people creating content, and you know, he's just trying to do the best for his company. Should he go hire 2 more engineers instead?
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of experience comes into play, right? You have to explain we're not trying to build or we're not trying to sell, market anything right now. Right? We're trying to build. And they know the same thing when we're trying to build the product out for people or for customers, right? It's the same thing, different analogy, but there is an expectation of revenue created from both of them, right? So the parallel is there.
Yeah. So there's a lot of questions here. Maybe just before we jump on to the next questions, then I just want to so we talked very much what we talked about here was things that takes place on your website. And what about how do you measure stuff that takes place outside of your website? You have any good ideas for that?
There are some, but again, they're very vague in that sense. I like consumption, which is something you can read on your site, right? But how long are people on there for advertise? On emails, like it's email read through, how many people are reading all the way through? Is it the content you're creating is good, like click through rate? And then when it's, let's say, LinkedIn, like what's the engagement? Like how many people are commenting, sharing besides your own company, right? So I think there's some indicators in terms of KPIs there you can set. And also in terms of output, like how many posts do we do a read, right? So it is a harder one to track.
Yeah, and it's pretty much related to Jillian's question here, but I would also say just, you know, when you have these off website examples of consumption, like do simple stuff as well as taking screenshots and sharing in them on Slack or Teams or whatever you use to show the organization that there's actually somebody who consumed our content and this person is actually an ideal customer profile for us. So it probably can't be all bad that we actually get the right people to consume our content.
No. And on LinkedIn, you can also see recent followers, right? So you can go once a week, go through the list, seeing, hey, this person follow up now. We must be doing something right, or they must like us, or there must be some content that they found valuable for them to do that. I don't follow that many people on LinkedIn. So when I do it, it's because I think it's very, very relevant content.
Yeah. Then kind of the split between creation and distribution, that's another classic. How do you regard that?
I like to use a floskel. I'm not sure if the 80-20, that is how I see it should be done, right? And especially in terms of SEO, writing an article in SEO takes maybe a day or 2, a week if it's really good. So spending a month promoting it, or the month equivalent in resources and paid, that's at least something that's a good rule of thumb when it comes to SEO. But overall, I like distribution that has to be built into the content strategy. Like, why are we trading it? How are we getting in front of the right people? Those two are really important.
Yeah, it's really crucial because like you create the best content in the world, but if nobody's get exposed to it, like it doesn't matter then.
No.
I think there's a couple of things here. So I can talk a little bit about how we think about it at Dreamdata. So we have kind of Jeremy and his content team, which is kind of, I regard that kind of as the engine room or the backbone of our content production. But that typically just gets released on our website and then on the corporate social profiles. But that doesn't reach that many people. So what we then as employees do, we kind of cherry pick on these different topics and then we write stuff on LinkedIn to try to, if not copy paste, then we at least get very heavily inspired by the blog post and then do, you can say, micro content on LinkedIn about the same things. But you might as well also consider, paying for people watching your content. So if you have good audiences set up across different social media, then I would say that in some ways, if budget allows, like, why do a piece of content if you don't pay for promoting it?
I agree. And the cool thing about that is very much the targeting on LinkedIn, and basing that specifically on what stage you're in your CRM, right? So you don't need to spend a bundle. You can create very targeted advertisements for this. That's not broad to the entire audience, right? So mapping that out using technology and ads, I think that's a brilliant idea if you spend time and it's valuable for this person at this stage.
Gillian, if you don't feel it was enough of an answer, just get back again. There's another related question here. So how do you determine the amount of time and resources you allocate to creating quality content? And what I heard you say before, Philip, was that the more time you spend, the better it gets. I'm not sure you would take that any day.
No. I think it's a very hard question. It really depends on the content. And I think I've said depend before. But overall, as I also mentioned before, this space is getting more and more competitive. People are getting smarter in using the different platforms. So it needs to stick out. It's not like when I started out, a 300-word SEO blog post could rank you in Google, right? Without any headlines, right? Now you need graphic designers, videographers, custom distribution, just to get it in front of a couple of people, right? So depends on how valuable you see this content in terms of the stages they're in, right? Is it top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom of funnel? So I think it's also, the lower down you are, go ahead.
Yeah. No, sorry, sorry for interrupting, but it also depends, what are you trying to do here? Are you trying to build a brand, or you're are you in a gray area affiliate web shop, stuff like that? Then you can get away with just posting poor quality. But in established brands like our two companies, we would never ever release a low quality piece of content, because if people read low quality, then they would also expect your product to be somewhat of low quality. So it's for me at least, it's just not an option to release something that you would think this is low quality.
No. But I think it's always good to have a rule of thumb when creating content. Like, how long time does it take to make a blog post versus where is the distribution? How long time does it take to create a white paper, right? So there's a lot of moving parts when doing this, especially when you're in a bigger team, cross-department functions, there's designers, the videographers, internal experts, external experts, right? So there has to be some way of formatizing that a little bit in terms of we say this person can create X amount of content per week. So having it as a resource.
Yeah. For example, when I write for LinkedIn, I have a rule that I can never spend more than 15 minutes doing it, because otherwise the cost of the production becomes too big, because I might risk I just hit the algorithm a day where it doesn't like me, or my viewers doesn't like me, and then I've wasted 2 hours writing what I thought was the perfect post, but nobody actually cared about it. So Grace, here's another good question. So we know that over time content pays for itself, but any tips for tracking its lifetime value?
I think that might be more related to you with your knowledge about that, because I haven't tried it out yet in Dreamdata.
So, it is a tough one, Grace, but I would, and I hate to sort of sell our own product, but I can give an example. In my last company, we were creating these articles where we did comparison articles against our competing brands. And those articles had very low volumes of organic traffic, but we still thought it makes sense to keep producing them. So when people chatted to us, we can say, this is what our product does do, and this is what the competing product does. And then at the end of my tenure there, I actually met my two co-founders of Dreamdata. And once we connected the data there, which has been tracking where did people arrive from, who did what from which account, etc., then we could see that there was actually certain articles that were creating massive amounts of value over time, meaning that we sold to these companies who read these articles. But yeah, so to do that kind of digital attribution, you need to first party track every visitor to the website and save that in a data warehouse. So you then later on can connect that to the deals that the salespeople win.
That's the technical explanation, and I think that is the right way to do it right now. I think there's a lot of speaking about the dark social, right, and all these things that's not trackable, but this is the first thing we can do, right? Like trying to track it as best as possible.
Yeah, exactly. So Nihal, we have touched the gated and non-gated, so you can catch it earlier in the conversation. Then Matan here has a question. Do you have any examples of non-paid effective distribution channels for top of funnel content? Yes.
I don't know if it's that good, but and I'm going to swear now a little bit because I'm going to say sites like Reddit is a real, not Reddit. What are they called?
It's Reddit as well.
I'm blanking now. It's not Reddit. Yeah, but it's not Reddit. I mean,
okay, but I can just.
Quora is a good example that comes to mind when I've seen some really great examples of that. Very broad. You could also supplement it with a little paid now, I think. But I think overall, getting that out there, it also had some good backlinks in the beginning. But PR is not something I've seen work a lot for this. So it has to be these more organic digital channels.
Yeah, what I would do for pretty much for any company would be to like keep a document of different communities around the internet where you can post your content. So for, like nowadays, Slack channels are huge, and most of them have like this shameless self promotion plug where you can go post them. There is, as you say, Quora, there's Reddit, there's so many communities out there if you map them out for your industry, that when if we were better at it, then we would take every blog post we make, we would then take a trip around all these communities and then put it out there. So I'd map all the communities. Then I would also, we're big on LinkedIn, and I think it's an incredible platform for distribution because the algorithm there is so viral. You get so broad. You go so broad so fast if people just start commenting and liking what you're posting.
Yeah, but again, it has to be native to the channel, right? So every time you go to Reddit, it has to provide value. It just can't be posting a link. Yeah. That is very important. Like I've seen some examples where visit my site, right? It has to be, you have to be engaging, and that's the hard part of it, right? It's not easy. It's not free in that sense that it requires time, resources.
Cool. So a couple of last things. How do you secure a budget if you say, now I feel like we should be producing content? How would you go about that, Phil?
It's a good one. I think it really depends on the alignment. Like internal alignment is crucial with your manager or CEO. It has to be also embedded in the company, right? So making a business case for I see X amount of revenue coming from this based on other people's stats, right? There are options out there to see that. You could also use it to gauge interest in traffic, right? But you have to have a business case for this to be viable for someone a little bit more senior. Starting out, like we're not all big startup enterprises that have 4 people in the content team. Sometimes it's just 1 or 2. So making sure that the resources are set for a longer term, right? And having that strategy, right? So in place. So when you see great results, that's always good. But when it's not looking good for a month or 2, it's still important to remember the strategy. But overall, getting that alignment is needed. Otherwise, there'll always be someone pushing you back and asking about what are the results this week, while it's the traffic on a week, right? So I'm always very hesitant when talking about numbers, but we need to talk to numbers for our managers, for my CEO, absolutely. And for my employees. Like everyone has to see the numbers because this is a business. But the business case can be, we will see this result in X amount of time. It will help these areas. It will help our salespeople sell faster. The deal close to cycle down, create confidence in our brand, right? So not everything is measurable, but at least you need to have a viable explanation on the business case of why we need to do this.
Yeah. And now both of us has kids coming home very soon. Maybe just let's both try to maybe share 1 or 2 advices on content production, etc., for people to leave with. So I don't know, do you have anything you want to start out with? Or there's the first thing I think about is, and you can think while I speak, but it's to, when you do your keyword research, the ones that have high intent of actually purchasing your product is always better to spend time on than the one that has the most volume in terms of, when you look at your search engine tools. You'll get so disappointed by ranking number 1 on a big, broad category, because it's always about the intent in the search when they come to your website.
Yeah, and I think that goes down to like the creating value part. Like, how do we create value that's not just something that people come, go, see, and there's no purchase intent, right? So always looking at the purchase intent in the beginning, right? That's needed. Unless you have time, unless you have unlimited resources, you need to do everything. But content production is hardcore priority. You have to prioritize what you do and why you do it, right? So be ruthless. Like, do we need a blog post about X? Like, who are we making it for? Why are we creating this? How are we distributing it? Like, those 4 questions I think are really pivotal when we start creating content. Like, start small. Don't make a 1-year calendar for this, right? Start tracking content consistently, get feedback, improve, and then start tracking. Don't need to track everything in the beginning. Right now, it's getting consistency out there. I think that's important.
Awesome. Let's end now, Philip. But thank you so much for taking the time to share some advice. And to all you people who wrote the questions, we both really appreciate you taking part in the conversation. It will be available again, where you can just replay it on LinkedIn or YouTube as well. So just do that. And I'm sure if you reach out to Philip, he will be happy to share advices as well. The same I will.
Yeah. Feel free.
So have a great day, guys. And